Thank you, Jenna. Everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining this presentation by the National Archive of Criminal Justice Data, or NACJD. I'm Becky Chu. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Alex Thoma and Anna Ekberiferd. In our presentation today, we're going to share NACJD's origin story, provide a then and now look at NACJD, and then talk about our restricted use data and how to use our data in the classroom. So just a little bit about NACJD. We are a topical archive that houses and disseminates data related to crime and criminal justice. We're located within our parent organization, the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research, or ICPSR, at the University of Michigan. NACJD was established at ICPSR in 1978 and is one of ICPSR's oldest archives. Our mission is to support secondary research on topics related to crime and criminal justice by facilitating the discovery and use of data. We aim to provide quality data for reuse, to reproduce results, and to facilitate new research. Our data users come from a variety of backgrounds, including academics and non-academics, students and faculty, and research and news organizations. There we go. NACJD is sponsored and funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, specifically 3 offices within the Office of Justice Programs. The Bureau of Justice Statistics, or BJS, produces official crime data and is the United States' primary source for statistics on crime, offenders, victims, and the criminal justice system. BJS produces and analyzes their own data. The National Institute of Justice, or NIJ, is the research, development, and evaluation agency of the Department of Justice. The NIJ invests in individual researchers across multiple disciplines and supports the advancement of science through evidence-based research. And the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, or OJJDP, supports efforts to prevent juvenile delinquency and improve the juvenile justice system. Like NIJ, OJJDP invests in individual researchers, and like BJS, they also produce and analyze their own data. Although we were established in 1978, our origin story actually extends back to the 1960s. And speaking of the 1960s, ICPSR opened her doors in 1962, so you may have heard that we are celebrating our 60th birthday this year. In honor of this, NACJD pulled together a few of our groovy studies that contain 1960s data. These studies are all public access, so you just need a valid email address to access the data. The links are included in the slides. Just click on the study number to get more information on our groovy data. Okay, back to the presentation. So in 1965, President Lyndon Johnson called for a war on crime, focusing on crime control and an evaluation of law enforcement officials' response to crime. Johnson established the President's Commission on Law Enforcement and the Administration of Justice, whose charge was to review all facets of crime and justice and make recommendations on how to best address the nation's crime problem. The Commission's task led to a collection of a tremendous amount of data, and in 1974, ICPSR was approached by the Department of Justice's Law Enforcement Assistance Administration and was asked to assist in the archiving and dissemination of some of these data. ICPSR was also to provide training, research services, and user support. So in 1978, work began to process and document several data collections on jails and juvenile detention facilities, court organization, and employment and expenditures in the criminal justice system. Also among the first data collections we received were the National Crime Surveys, which today you may know as the National Crime Victimization Survey. The NCVS collects personal and household victimization data. It's one of our most frequently accessed collections and is still being processed and disseminated by NACJD today. Fun fact, we were originally named the Criminal Justice Archive and Information Network. Starting in 1989, ICPSR documentation referred to us as the National Archive of Criminal Justice Data. Personally, I think NACJD has a snappier ring to it than CJANE, so that was a good call, ICPSR. We started releasing data in the late 1970s, and by the end of the 1980 fiscal year, NACJD had 45 studies available for use, and staff responded to almost 200 user support requests. The next year, we had over 60 studies available and over 260 user support requests. And the number of releases and help requests just continued to grow each year after that. NACJD used to advertise our data collections through physical catalogs. Data were originally distributed on magnetic tape or in card images until we upgraded to distribution on CDs. The image on the left of this slide shows some of our collections on CD-ROM. The image on the right shows data that were sent to us on reel tapes. So as you can see, as an archive, we'll hold on to pretty much everything. We've also had several facelifts over the years as we moved from generating data release reports on typewriters to various versions of websites. Early NACJD websites were used primarily as search engines to browse our collections database. Over time, our website grew to include mechanisms for acquiring and disseminating data, as well as applying for restricted data access. And with that, I'll hand the presentation over to Alex, who will talk more about our restricted data and how NACJD looks today.
Thank you, Becky, and hi, everyone. So as you all can see, NACJD now looks a lot different than it used to. Our homepage has been updated and modernized. Our search tools and study metadata have been significantly enhanced. We've implemented help pages, frequently asked questions, and user support resources, as well as various learning and data resource guides, which we will talk a bit more about later in this presentation. So today, NACJD contains more than 3,200 curated studies and statistical data series with more than 59,000 users worldwide. To date, our team have responded to more than 3,500 user requests for data, documentation, or other support. Some of our most popular collections listed here include the National Crime Victimization Survey, as Becky mentioned earlier, the National Corrections Reporting Program, the Federal Justice Statistics Program, the Project on Human Development in Chicago Neighborhoods, the Uniform Crime Reporting Program, and the National Incident-Based Reporting Program. Now, this wouldn't be a NACJD presentation if we didn't talk a bit about restricted data. NACJD is home to more restricted data collections than any other topical archive here at ICPSR, with more than 1,300 restricted collections and roughly 300 active restricted users today. Users who are interested in accessing restricted data will need to complete an application process prior to gaining data access. And you can find more information about the application process, including a list of our application requirements, on our website, which is linked in this slide. Restricted access procedures were first introduced at NACJD in the mid to late 1990s due to an increased need to protect respondent confidentiality while also promoting the reuse of sensitive data on crime and criminal justice. Today, NACJD's restricted data are disseminated via 3 different access mechanisms. And the access mechanism for a particular study is determined by NACJD and ICPSR in consultation with the data producer prior to the data release, which means the access mechanism for a particular data set that you might be interested in will be predetermined or pre-selected by the time you initiate your application. So I do want to give a quick overview of our restricted data access mechanisms, moving from least to most restrictive. So first, for the least restrictive and the most commonly used mechanism is secure download. So once a user's restricted data application is approved, they will receive their own password-protected, encrypted copy of the restricted data, which they will then be required to store and access in a secure manner as they've specified in their application materials. All statistical output must be vetted for disclosure risk by the user prior to publication, and all output vetting guidance is provided in the application documentation. Next is the Virtual Data Enclave, or VDE, where users access data via a virtual desktop interface that is managed by ICPSR and is completely isolated from the end user's desktop computer. Internet access in the VDE is disabled, and users are restricted from moving or copying data files in or out of this environment. Because of this, any statistical output must be vetted and removed from the VDE by ICPSR staff before it can be used for publications. Finally, the most restrictive access mechanism used only for our most sensitive collections is the Physical Data Enclave, or the PDE. For PDE access, users must physically travel to Ann Arbor, Michigan in order to access the data in a secure physical environment that is actively monitored by NACJD staff. Like the VDE, all statistical output must be vetted and removed by ICPSR staff before it can be used for publications. Now, despite many of our collections being restricted, these data are accessible by the general public, and they do not require any special fees or ICPSR membership affiliation in order to gain or apply for access. So because our data are publicly accessible in this way, we have seen a very wide range of use by non-traditional researchers, including journalists, policymakers, nonprofit organizations, and even citizen scientists who have generated a number of publications and other data-related products, in addition to, standard academic research products. Our bibliography, which is available on our website and is linked in these slides, provides a full list of known products involving NACJD data, including some that even date all the way back to the 1960s. So sticking with our anniversary theme of 60 years of Groovy data, we have a list of some Groovy publications from the NACJD bibliography that were either first published in the 1960s or involve the use of 1960s crime data. You can find citations, abstracts, related data, and full text options for all of these publications and more directly from our website, either within the bibliography section if you're browsing for studies more generally, or from the data-related publications tab on a particular study homepage if you already have a particular study or data set in mind. In some cases, browsing that related publications tab for a particular study can really help users to determine whether or not that study will be useful for their research, which makes the bibliography a really great resource for prospective data users, especially prospective restricted data users. And bringing it back over to the present day, I did also want to highlight a couple of unique non-standard data use cases that have recently caught my eye over the past couple of years. So first is the Fatal Encounters Project in collaboration with researchers at the University of Southern California, who used data from NACJD to generate a national officer-involved homicide database, as well as interactive data visualization tools, which are all available online and are linked here. Next, a Harvard research team recently made use of NACJD data in an experimental setting, aiming to investigate machine learning and human decision-making outcomes in the criminal justice system, and their publication is also linked here. The Vera Institute of Justice, which is an independent nonprofit and frequent NACJD data user, used NACJD data along with a few other data sources to generate interactive web-based tools for both arrest and incarceration trends. And NACJD data have been used and cited in various news articles written by organizations such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and many more. So as you can see, NACJD data use is definitely not limited to academia, though we do offer plenty of great resources that are geared towards academic and classroom data use. And with that, I will pass it over to Anna to talk a bit more about these resources.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, I'm Anak Beriford. I'm the Data Project Assistant for NACJD, and I will be talking about NACJD resources and our use of the data in the classroom. You can download our data and documentation from the study homepage. You can look at our frequently asked questions under the help section of our website. However, if you don't see your question answered, you can always access us over at nacjd@icpsr.umich.edu. One of our resources we have are resource guides. These are primarily written for our longitudinal and BJS studies. They contain a plethora of information on the study, such as an overview of the study, a history, method, sampling, and so on. As a note, each resource guide is different from each other because they are studying different things. And some of these resource guides aren't even for studies, such as our homicide guide, which points to different studies and series where homicide is a major theme. These resources are excellent for the classroom because they put data in its context. Another resource we have is our data learning guides. These are walkthroughs that focus on key features of the study, calculating rates from counts, preparing data for analysis, and merging data files. These data learning guides assume that the user have no prior statistical background, so it's very thorough in its explanations and examples of syntax. It is primarily written in R and SPSS, but there are some examples that are in Stata. Another resource we have is our online analysis tool. This is with our SDA, or Survey Documentation and Analysis tool. This is a free tool that is usable on the browser, so you do not need to download any data or documentation. The SDA allows you to review frequencies, make crosstabs, do comparison means, and so on. You can find studies that have the SDA feature through our SDA page on the resources and also through our search function. So if you look specifically for the filter data file format and look for online analysis, you can see that we have roughly 340 studies with this capability. Another really good resource on this page is the NatGID web-based SDA tutorial, as well as the video tutorial and overview for the SDA and its features. So this is what the SDA interface looks like. On the left, you will see a variable tree, and on the right, you see the crosstab program. A really great place to start on this webpage is the Getting Started section. This will be an overview of the SDA and its features alongside of some information for troubleshooting. The Analysis tab is where you can see Alex, can you change the... Yes, thank you. The Analysis tab is where you can run comparison of means or a correlational matrix. The Create Variables tab is where you can recode variables. And the Download tab is where you can see the variables that are underneath the variable tree. So you can see the header. You can also look at the data collection description link to go back to the study homepage to review the metadata for the study. So this is an example of what a frequency table looks like from the SDA. As you can see, it has the variable name. The labels are also provided if it's relevant, and you also see a standard deviation and mean. And then this is what a crosstab looks like produced from the SDA. It is color-coded based on Z values. The variable and value labels are also present. And yes. So hopefully with this brief kind of overview of the SDA, you can see that it's a groovy tool. As a note, for these tables, I've been using NCVS data. So you compare the NCVS data resource guide and the SDA. If there's any professors here, you can see that the SDA is a pretty accessible tool to use. So if statistics isn't a major part of your class, but you still want to work with data manipulation in the classroom, the SDA is a great tool for that. It could be incorporated in quizzes, in problem sets, or in final papers. If you're a student, hopefully you can see the SDA can be easily used to add tables and infographics to papers or presentations. And with that, thank you for attending our session. If you have any additional questions, you can contact us at natjd@icpsr.umich.edu, but we will also be in the exhibit hall on Wednesday, the 21st at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that, I will pass it over to Jenna.
Very well done. You guys, I mean, gee, you got done in 20 minutes. That's fantastic. What a bunch of very important information. It was very fun to see your groovy data, and I can't wait to check it out. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, feel free to pop them into the Q&A box and we will answer them. Otherwise, we'll end early. I'd like to give it 1 or 2 more minutes because sometimes, oh, there we go. Sometimes it takes a little while to type in a question, but I see we have one question that popped in. It says, do you have any new data?
Yes, good question. We actually release new data every month, sometimes twice a month. So I would suggest that you check out our website. We have an announcements page where we list all of our new releases. And it is a regular thing, so I would check back probably around the beginning of each month to see our new data.
And do you have, like, say, can they sign up to be on an email list where they would get these announcements just automatically?
No, I don't. We don't currently have an email. Is that right, Alex? We don't have one that.
Yeah, so we don't have a NACJD specific email, but there is an ICPSR email that you can sign up for all recent ICPSR releases and additions. So that is what we recommend our users sign up for.
Okay, that is great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there is another question that is, can we get the slides? I can answer that one because you have a lot of very helpful links in those slides. The slides will be available as well as a recording of this session at the end of the data fair. So just give us a little time to make sure we can prep it. We need to add captions and stuff, but they will be sent out. Okay, and it looks like so far we've answered the questions. So thank you very much to the three of you. You did a lovely job. Very good information. And thank you to everyone who attended. I hope that you are having a great Monday, and we're going to end the session now. Thank you.
Thank you.